Hello and welcome to the OTB channel. Is there such a thing as a new user distro? I ask the question because every time I mention a distro that is really good for new users, what I tend to get is lots of comments saying, well, I'm a really experienced Linux user and I've been using this for years. You don't have to be a new user to get the benefits of this particular distro. And I do tend to agree that on the whole, many of the so-called user-friendly distros are great for any Linux user. It's up to personal preference. However, there's one distro that pitches itself specifically as a new user distro. In fact, it even calls itself a gateway distro for new users, and that's Linux Lite. And today, that's what we're going to take a quick look at. See you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So, Linux Lite. It's a distro that I must have downloaded 4 or 5 times in the last year with the intention to do a review of it. But something else has always come up that I thought, oh no, I'll do that instead. So it's tended to get left behind. But it's a distro that is really popular. Yes, it's based on Ubuntu, so it's another Ubuntu spin, if you like. It's based on the long-term support release. I'm going to look at 5.2, which is the latest release. But I know we're always going to get the questions whenever I look at something like an Ubuntu spin, is it just about theming, or has it got something special to offer? And they're legitimate questions because so many spins are just rethemed versions of the original. And my personal view is there are lots of distros out there and it's all good because it gives us more choice. But if I just see something that's been rethemed and it doesn't have anything special to offer, I tend to think, well, is there anything in that I couldn't have done myself, within a couple of minutes? So it really needs to offer something a little bit more than the parent distro that it's based on in order, in my view, to justify its position. So Linux Lite, very much pitched for new users. They make no bones about it. As I said, it's pitched as a gateway distro. It's meant to be easy to use. It's meant to make the transition from Windows to Linux as simple as possible for a new user. It's based on the XFCE desktop, which I personally think is a good starting point. I've always liked XFCE. You know that my favorite desktop environment is Mate, but as a close second, XFCE follows along. And I have to say that the default install of XFCE isn't pretty. Not really. It looks quite 1990s-esque. But the beauty of XFCE is it's very easy to theme. And some of the nicest looking distros that I've seen have got an XFCE desktop. So, Linux Lite, is it a contender? Is it something that more people should be using? Is it something that's not just for new users, but would be suitable for anybody? Well, I don't know. Let's go and have a look at the website. Right, so you can see the Linux Lite website in front of you. Let me just have a cup of coffee. Quick slurp. Okay, so there you can see it. And it's one of these websites that moves around all over the place. So what do we see here? So it's a gateway operating system, your first simple, fast and free stop in the world of Linux. It's about making the transition from Windows to Linux as smooth as possible. It's free, based on Ubuntu LTS. Okay, so it's unashamedly pitched at brand new users and users coming from the world of Windows. I believe it's from New Zealand. I don't think there are that many distros from New Zealand, so that in itself is quite interesting. What I would say, though, is you scroll through the website, it's full of adverts, which I find really annoying. Um, Maybe an argument in itself for putting an ad blocker here. So at home, at work, in the office, playtime, etc., etc. So, yeah, that's pretty much all it tells us. I often find, and here's me being, an old fuddy-duddy, that these websites that move all over the place with graphics just annoy the heck out of me. All the features, so office photographs, screenshots. Let's have a look at the screenshots, and we get an ad straight away. Right, and yeah, so you can take a look at it before you start. That's fine. The download, so they're really pushing the buy media. So let's just click on that. Support us on Patreon. Okay, that's fine. Buy media, buy a personalized copy. Developers have got to make money. I understand that. Download the current release. So the current release is 5.2, released in November of last year. And I'm really pleased to see that they have a torrent link. I downloaded it over torrent and it took, a couple of minutes. I think it's just me, but distros that put themselves on SourceForge, I just never seem to be able to get a fast SourceForge download. So I always do a bit of a sigh when I see something that's up there. But a torrent link, absolutely great. Tips, okay, so it's punting for money. Again, as long as they're not making that a criteria for downloading the distro, which in this case they don't, that's all good. It tells us a little bit about the release here. It comes with Firefox, Chrome, TeamViewer, VLC, which you can all install very easily, and an easy-to-follow help manual. You can install Steam for your Windows games, and it has a Windows-like start menu to the left and a tray to the right with volume, network, and calendar options. Well, but most XFCE desktops do, so that's nothing really spectacular. Kernel 5.4, but you can also download custom kernels available from their repository. It does come with GIMP out of the box and VLC, Thunderbird, LibreOffice and Firefox. And what's new in this particular version? Well, I'm pleased to see they've removed Adobe Flash. I mean, who uses that anymore? I think its days are long gone. Firewall D as a firewall. Okay, I prefer UFW. Spell check for LibreOffice US only. Okay, but you can install the GB version if you want to. And some various bug fixes. Look, we're not really going to get an idea of what this looks like until we boot it. So let's boot into it in VirtualBox and let's see what it offers. So you should see in front of you now Linux Lite. I've not bothered showing you the installation because, to be honest, like all Ubuntu-based systems, it uses the Ubiquity installer, and it's just a case of next. And the installation completed within very few minutes, certainly less than 5 minutes. I clicked on it to do updates during the installation and added third-party packages, and I then rebooted. I've got it running in straightforward BIOS mode here, and to be honest, once you've seen one Ubuntu-type installation, you've seen them all, so we're not going to waste our time with that. So here we are, and you can see we've got a nice, clean XFCE desktop, and with the default wallpaper, with the feather. Okay, so Linux Lite, how light is it? It has got HTOP installed already, so let's have a look at what it's doing. And I can see there it's running at 655 megs. I haven't opened anything up on here. I've simply rebooted it. I ran all the updates to start off with. I've rebooted it and I've logged in. Now, it's not terrible, 655 megs, but I would have, with XFCE, expected to see something nearer around 500 megs. So I wouldn't say this was particularly light, but to be honest, that's not a massive issue in this day and age. I mean, most people have several gigs of RAM, and something running under a gig is going to be fine. It's probably, no, on 655 megs, not something I would look at for really old hardware, but for most computers these days, it should be fine. Now, we see we've got a welcome screen there. This seems to become very popular on Linux distros over the past few years, and I think it's a good thing, especially for those who are quite new to Linux. And of course, this distribution unashamedly targets itself to brand new Linux users by describing itself as a gateway distribution, and one that's meant to make the transition from Windows to Linux as easy as possible. Now, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, well, that in itself is a debatable subject, and we can come all the way back to these issues of how important is it to increase Linux market share, and if Windows users are going to move over to Linux, should we really be trying to replicate the experience they have on Windows? Well, it has pros and cons in my view. Certainly, I think a Windows user who's using Linux for the first time, if they have something that's not completely foreign to them and feels quite familiar, that could help them to make the transition. Personally, I'm not too bothered about increasing market share, and I'm a big believer that Linux is not Windows, and if you want to install Linux and get used to Linux and understand how it works, well, let's just do Linux and let's not worry too much about what Windows is doing. But that's just my viewpoint, and I know it's not one held by everybody. But anyway, it pitches itself as a new Linux user distribution, but of course it's just XFCE, and it's using the Ubuntu LTS repos. And yeah, so you get presented with this, and I quite like this. I do think these are useful. So you get a button to install updates. I've already done that. You've got the standard link there to the driver install if you're using non-free drivers. This is very much Windows language. Set a restore point. What that does for you is opens up Timeshift. Well, I think it opens up Timeshift. Let's have a look. I'm not going to do it whilst I'm here, but let's just see if that's what it's opening up. Yes, it is. It's Timeshift. I'm just going to finish that. I don't want to continue at the moment. Okay, so let's go back to that front page. You can install language support, and you can select a dark or light theme. So let's have a look at a dark or a light theme. I'm personally a bit of a fan of dark themes, so let's just drag this over here and open up the file manager, which I'm presuming is Thunar. Yes, it is Thunar. Let's change the theme and let's see if it switches straight away. So let's go for the dark theme. Dark theme applied. Okay, well, I would personally go with that. You can go with whatever you prefer. I quite like the icons there, and I quite like the look and feel of that. So that would suit myself. So let's go back to the home page of this. Then we have a section here for support. So let's click on online support, and we get links to the forums and also links to an online manual. So search the forums, register at the forums, log in, etc., etc. I want to look at the online manual. I believe that a manual is crucial, really, far more than the look and feel. Oh, right. Far more than the look and feel. I think an actual manual that people can refer to is brilliant. I know it takes a huge amount of effort to create these things, but I'm just looking at this. That is really friendly, isn't it? So let's just, I don't know, let's go to the install section and see what happens. Right, so we get into more of a traditional way of doing things here. Okay, yeah. So it takes us through how you install Linux Lite. I quite like that. Network. Oh, ads. We don't like ads. Right, accessing a NAS device rather, connecting to the internet wired and wirelessly, creating Linux Lite shares. Okay, great. Hardware. Okay, that's useful. Tutorials. Antivirus. Okay, I suppose Windows users are likely to think of antivirus as something that you have to have. But for any Windows users watching this, it's really not critical with Linux. I don't use an antivirus program at all. But it goes on about the firewall, time shift, which creates your restore utility or a backup if you like, USB persistence, VirtualBox. I'm not going to go through this in detail other than to say I think an online manual is a great idea. And I've just noticed here that actually the manual, there's a link to it from the desktop, so all good. You can see that it's booted into 1920 by 1080. I did have to install the guest editions. I'm just going to, well, I was going to say I was going to unmount that, but there doesn't seem to be a link to unmount it, so never mind. But yeah, so a nice little welcome screen, a hardware database, UEFI and secure boot, and then a section for contributing if that's what you'd like to do. There's even a link there to a shop. Okay. I don't know what this is about. Let's just click on it and see what it brings up. Okay, you can purchase a Linux Lite DVD. There doesn't seem to be much else there. I have to say they like their ads, don't they? Which isn't something that I'm particularly a fan of. You can buy it on USB, so $20 though. That seems quite expensive. But anyway, let's just shut that down. So I think the welcome screen is fine. I don't have a problem with it. I think it can be helpful. If you're new to Linux and you just want to do some basic stuff right from the word go, all good. So let's just shut that down. And let's have a look and see what we've got. So we've got the whisker menu here, which is quite nicely configured. I like the way that looks with the dark theme. Recently used. Well, you can see I've been using the package manager and the tweaks package and the web browser, which is all good. My computer, so you've got links to all your various folders. You have, of course, got settings here. And I noticed that on the desktop, they actually have an icon here to your settings called Control Panel, which is obviously another nod in the direction of Windows users. And yeah, I mean, it looks very friendly. We'll have a look at what the icon set is afterwards, but I quite like the look of it. And you've got the standard stuff, so your appearance. And we're using the adapter Nakoto style. What icons are we using? We're using the Papyrus icons that match that. We're using the standard Roboto fonts. Okay, well, that's fine. Let's go back to all settings. You've got high DPI settings there, color profiles, the power manager, preferred applications. Um, the Lite desktop, Lite info. I wonder what that is. Let's just have a quick look. Sorry, the hardware database does not accept submissions from a virtual machine. Okay, that's fair enough. So on real hardware, that's likely to work. Lite network shares and Lite software. So let's have a look at Lite software. And we're being prompted to enter our user password. Would you like to update the software sources now? Let's say yes and see what happens. Okay, so you get this. Let me just minimize this main one. You get this little box here. What do you want to do? Do you want to install software or do you want to remove software? Well, let's click on install and see what they have. This is one of the features that sort of sets Linux Lite apart. It's a curated list of software, of popular software that you may well want to install. And I'm just looking here at what it has. It's not got a massive amount. It's a selection, I suppose, of programs that Windows users coming across to Linux may immediately want to install. So we have the Chrome web browser, Dropbox, Etcher, a games pack, okay, so Solitaire, Mahjong, etc. NitroShare, remote desktop software, which is Rumina, Skype, Spotify, Teams, TeamViewer, VirtualBox, etc., etc. You can see what's there. Actually, not a bad thing. Microsoft Teams is there. I'm just going to install that now. Do you want to proceed? Yes, I do, please. And I'll tell you why. I have to use Windows at work. I have a Windows laptop. And I spend an awful lot of my time delivering remote training courses and on remote conferences. I think everybody's the same at the moment with the lockdown. And Microsoft Teams has very much become the go-to. Now, I've got Teams installed on my Arch system as well. And I'm using it on my Arch system because it saves me having to use Windows. And it's not that it's necessarily a choice for me. Let's go into, I don't know, internet. Yeah, there's my Microsoft Teams preview, which is the official release. It's not that I would necessarily choose Microsoft Teams if it was left completely up to me. The point is, it's not left up to me. And everybody else who works in my company has to use Microsoft Teams, therefore so do I. So having it available on a quick install like that is great. It may be a preview release, but I found that actually it works pretty good. I'm just going to quit that. Clearly that works. It's just a quick way of installing. Now, I believe Lite also comes with Synaptic installed, but it hasn't got your traditional software store. Whether you see that as a good or bad thing, I don't know. Personally, I don't mind. You've got a curated list. If you just want to do a quick install, you can use the command line, or you can use Synaptic if you want to search for something. And it doesn't have snaps and flatpaks installed out of the box here. You can obviously install them. But in fact, that's pretty much a feature. I'm quite surprised at that because I would have thought an Ubuntu-based distro would have had snaps installed out of the box. The fact that it hasn't is a little bit of a positive for me, if I'm honest. But, you know, you can install both if you wish. So let's just have a quick look through the menu. So you've got all the settings. We've seen them. The firewall configuration, I'm a little bit surprised at this because it's Firewall D. I'm just going to quit out of there. I would have thought that if you want to make a system as simple as possible, UFW would have been a better choice. But at the end of the day, both are good firewalls, so it's not a huge issue. You've also got a few settings here that are specific to Lite. So Lite Desktop. Okay, so it enables you to enable or disable various things. So if I wanted to disable the control panel, presumably. Okay, no, because it's already there. Let's try again then. Lite, where are we? It was Lite Desktop, wasn't it? So the control manager is already enabled. Fine, so we can't do much with that. Network, disable. Control panel, disable. Let's try to disable it and see what happens. Right, that's it. It's disappeared now. So we can obviously still access all the settings, but it's taken the little icon off the desktop. I've personally found, as I've been using Linux and using more window managers over the last year or so, that I like a really clean desktop with nothing there, but hey-ho. Lite network shares, Lite software we've already looked at, Lite sounds. Okay, that's nice and neat. So I suppose it's these sort of things that really separate a distro from its parent system and make it more than just about themes. What else have we got? Lite sources. Loading Lite repositories. So select a repository from the mirror below. Okay, so have we got a UK one? Yes, we have. So let's select that. Use selected repository. Switching mirror. Updating cache. All done. Okay. Very nice. I do like that. What else have we got here? Lite Upgrade. So this is if you were on 5.1 and you wanted to go to 5.2. The Lite User Manager. The Lite Welcome Screen. So the User Manager presumably. Okay, OTB is the user here. So it's just a GUI for managing users. What else is in the settings? There's a few things here actually. But let's... Lite Widgets. Enable Lite Widget. I don't know what that is. Oh, right, okay. So it's just a simple thing that tells us memory total, memory used, which is still at around 694 megs. That's not bad, actually, because we weren't far from that when we first started, and I've been messing about with it. Okay, so it's like a very basic conky. And you have all your standard settings in there as well. What about accessories? Yeah, standard stuff, graphics. Good to see the GIMP there, but also Paint, a document scanner, and a photo manager. I noticed that Linux Lite tends to use generic names such as Mail Client for what is clearly Thunderbird and Web Browser for what is clearly Firefox. But the fact that it's there, all good. Multimedia, so they've got a CD, DVD burning application, VLC. Still my favourite, despite all of the criticisms that there's been of it. You've got LibreOffice there, which is great. And then your system. So partition drives, I'm presuming that's just going to be G-parted, but let's have a look. Yeah. G-parted is exactly what it is. So let's go back to system information, system log, system restore utility. So there's your time shift. That's pretty much it, to be honest. So yeah, it's got a sensible selection of applications. It's not over the top. And because it provides a curated software store, it would allow a user to get up and running quite easily. I want to look at one more thing really now. They have something called Lite Tweaks, which I believe is a set of scripts really where you can do a whole range of things. So boot up repair, free up memory on your system. Let's see what happens with this. And I'm just seeing my memory, I see, has gone up to 725 megs or what have you. It doesn't seem to be shifting that much, but okay. What's your default web browser? Display disk usage, clean the Firefox cache, hide or show suspend and hibernate buttons, set your host name, the kernel installer. Install specific kernels. Could be useful if you've got very new hardware and the LTS kernel is a little bit too old for you. So let's have a look at what we've got here. Or a little... Okay. You've got a whole range of kernel versions to choose from there. Clearly, you're going to need to know which one is going to do it for you. I would personally stick with the generic one. The kernel remover, log archives, enable or disable numlock at login, clean the package cache. Okay. So apparently there's 272 megs. Let's just clean that. Nice and simple. And manage save session, TLP for laptops, restore the taskbar, remove 10 recently used items on the menu, and set up ZRAM. Really nice on older systems. So this is a form of swap that sits in memory, essentially. I do like that. And it does sort of set Linux Lite apart, and it means it's not just a differently themed system. Last but not least, I mean, let's just have a look at some of the wallpaper that we can perhaps choose from. So desktop settings, lots of wallpaper with these feathers on, as you can see. But you've got a decent selection there. Just click on them. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever be owning one of them as much as I might like to. A sort of Windows-style wallpaper. And I looked at this earlier. I quite like those wallpapers that have a hint of red. So it is what it is, guys. It's a nice XFCE desktop. You've got stability there because it's the LTS release. There's a lot of easy stuff in here, the curated software center, and I like the fact that Synaptic is there. I quite like the fact that you've got some easy tools, scripts there in the tweaks menu. So, a decent enough distro. Let's go and have a chat. Right, so that's Linux Lite. So what do I think about it? Okay. Did it blow me away? No. It's an XFCE distro. It has some quite nice features. I do like the custom scripts that can allow certainly a new user, or anybody, let's face it, to quickly action various things that you want to be done. I thought the theming was fine. I like the fact that you can add ZRAM very quickly. That is something that I think is becoming more and more popular. I do like the curated application list, something that would appear for pretty good for new users, I think, of common applications that certainly if they're coming across from Windows, they may already be used to using. So a simple way to add them is great. But if you're going to pitch it against new users, there is a question there. Would a software store be better than just that curated list? It's personal preference. For me personally, I don't think it's necessarily just a new user distro. It's obviously got some features to try and make it very user-friendly. But at the end of the day, it's just an Ubuntu distro, and it's based on the long-term support release. And if you like the theming and you enjoy the little scripts and the curated software store, and you're used to working with Synaptic for everything else or on the command line, it's going to be as good as any other Ubuntu-based distro. I think it justifies its position by having the tweaks, if you like, the links to those various scripts that you can quickly action. And by having special settings, which are custom settings, really, which just give you little GUIs to do various things. So I'm not blown away by it, but I think it's a decent enough distro. Would I personally install it? No, I wouldn't. Even if I was looking for an Ubuntu-based distro, my personal viewpoint would I'd install Ubuntu and tweak it myself. But I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with installing something like this. It seems fine. To pitch it solely to new users, though, I think limits its market quite a lot. Some things that I wasn't keen on, I hated the website, all the moving about and adverts all over the place, but I fully accept that, developers need to make a living as well. So sometimes that's just one of those things that we have to put up with. It's like ads on YouTube. They're annoying, but they're necessary in some ways. The one thing that I was a little bit surprised at was where it pitches itself as light, but the RAM usage certainly was not what I would call light. It's not excessive, but it's certainly not down at the levels that I would have expected for a lightweight distro. But other than that, guys, it's another distro that you can choose to use. And as I say, I've been looking at this, doing a review of this for a long time, so I'm glad I've looked at it. I'm just sorry, really, it didn't blow me away, but it didn't. So, guys, that's it for this week. Thanks very much for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please come and join us on Facebook. Join me on Library. And last but not least, as normal, I would, of course, like to thank my Patreons, Devon, Corbinian, Robert, Gary, Aristotelis, Stormpick, Stephen, Mike Long, David, Entropy UK, Richard, Ty, Philip, Forrest, Scott, and Patrick. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate your support. I'm still thinking about the Patreon thing that I talked about last week. Oh, by the way, I had a comment. I won't mention any names, but I had a comment on last week's ramble about this new mic and would it be possible to get it out of the screenshot? No, it wouldn't. I'm sorry. It's on the desk. This is as low as it goes. And even if I did put it lower, it's a dynamic mic. It wouldn't be picking up the sound properly. I don't think it's too excessive. It's not as bad as my Procaster, which was constantly in front of my face. So I'm pretty happy with it overall. Anyway, guys, have a good weekend. I don't know what the weather's like near you. It's very snowy here in Lancashire, and it's been freezing cold. It took me a while to heat up this cabin to the point where I was comfortable doing this video without my coat on. Guys, I hope you're all safe. Lots of horrible things happening with this thing that's sweeping the world. Hopefully we'll get a grip on it in the first quarter. But until then, stay well, be careful. Thanks, everyone.